Hey folks, hope you all are doing well. I'm Karan Bandal from Econosite. And in this video, let's talk about the relationship between the size of a nation's economy and the value of the currency in circulation, with a focus on comparing India with the United States. We'll try to analyze by the end of the video which nation is doing better when it comes to digital payments or being a cashless economy. A general thesis is that if you have fewer dollar bills or fewer rupee notes in circulation, that is, less cash in the system, it is likely that fewer cash transactions are taking place. Therefore, that economy is moving towards being a cashless economy or is doing better when it comes to digital or electronic payments. For the past several years, particularly after the COVID pandemic, India has touted the progress the nation has made on digital payments front. The well-to-do class in India have used credit cards or debit cards for a long time now. They have always had access to electronic forms of payment. But UPI, that is Unified Payments Interface, has enabled almost every Indian who has a smartphone to pay or accept payment using a digital mean or in a cashless manner. In a nation of 1.4 billion, around 750 million Indians have smartphones. That covers a large section of the Indian adult population that has access to digital payments now. So let's quantify how India fares against the global average when it comes to being a cashless economy. We'll use a basic metric, a ratio of the value of currency in circulation to the size of the GDP. A lower ratio would mean that there is less cash in the economy and more digital transactions are taking place. For example, let's say there are two nations, A and B, both with the same GDP of $100. Nation A has $10 worth of currency in circulation, whereas nation B has $15 worth of currency in circulation. In this case, we would say nation A is doing better in terms of digital payments. To set the stage, here's a benchmark. Sweden leads the world in this space. As of 2023, cash in circulation as a percentage of its GDP was below 2% in Sweden, one of the lowest rates globally. Now let's look at India. As of March 2024, India's GDP stood at about 296.6 lakh crore rupees or about $3.6 trillion. If you add up the value of all 2 rupee, 5 rupee, 10 rupee, 20 rupee, all the way up to 500 rupee and 2000 rupee notes in circulation, it comes out at around 35.5 lakh crore rupees. So, for India, the cash or currency in circulation as a percentage of its GDP stands at roughly 12%. You can see 500 rupee notes make up most of the cash in circulation, followed by 100 and 200 rupee notes. So India is doing much worse than Sweden in digital payments. In case of the United States, as of the available data from 2022, US GDP then was over $25 trillion. Total cash in circulation was over $2 trillion. So here, the currency in circulation to GDP comes in at about 9%, with $100 bills dominating the cash in the system. So the US is doing much better than India, though not as good as Sweden. But there's a catch. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. It has been the most widely used international currency since 1945. The rest of the world holds a great deal of US dollars, that is cash, dollar bills. There is a reason for that. Some countries around the world are plagued with unreliable governing institutions that lead to political and economic instability. Countries like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Lebanon, etc. come to mind. Pakistan to some extent. So the residents of these countries tend to hold more dollars. This is good for them as they get a reliable store of value and medium of exchange. So the point is, even though it may seem that the US has more than expected cash in circulation at around 9% of its GDP, not all the cash is inside the United States. A significant portion of that cash is outside the country. Roughly half of all US currency in circulation, that is around $1.1 trillion worth of dollar bills, are outside the US. including over 2/3 of all $100 bills. So the effective cash to GDP ratio for the US sits at 4.5%, much closer to where Sweden is. Going back to India, India's cash to GDP ratio is almost 3 times that of the US. If you check globally, the average for currency in circulation as a share of GDP hovers around 7 to 10% for most countries. India is doing a little worse than even the global average. In summary, a rough indicator for a good digital economy can be currency in circulation to GDP ratio. The lower the better. India's cash to GDP ratio is not impressive as we saw. But had UPI not been there, it is likely that India might have had even more cash in the system. So as India's economy continues to grow, as UPI continues to grow, it is likely that cash to GDP ratio for India will come down with time. But we need to know where we stand so that we can track the progress. I hope you found this analysis interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.